All right, welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet.
And I'm Trisha Carr.
We are here because this is kind of a breaking news because in about a month, less than a month actually, we have a documentary coming. We don't, but there's a documentary coming out called Leaving Neverland. And this is very controversial, especially to the Micheal Jackson family and then the friends and family that has worked with him throughout his career. So we have some very special guests on today. We are going to introduce our first guest. She's in studio. Her name is Geraldine Hughes. She was part of the executive, or she was an executive secretary for the attorneys for the, I think the first boy in 1993. She was got to see the insight of all what's going on around the first accusation against Micheal Jackson, the molestation accusation. And then we're going to talk about her book, but we're going to talk about the documentary as they see it. Because I think Geraldine got to see the documentary at the Sundance Film Festival, which none of us have seen it because it's not out yet. And then we have on the phone, we have the attorney, a defense attorney for Micheal Jackson back in 2005, but he's a former LA defense attorney. He was a professor at the Irvine University School of Law. Now he's a radio host, and we're excited to hear about that. Brian was also an advisor to Governor Jerry Brown, and so he, again, has been a part of the Jackson family because he was really good friends of the Jackson family for over 30 years. So we want to thank you both for being here on Truth Be Told. Oh, the crowd goes wild. So first of all, Geraldine, I want to thank you for being here and being part of the panel today because there's a documentary that you got to see, and I want to start with you because you actually got to see the documentary. Can you explain a little bit more about the documentary and what's coming out and why it's so controversial, especially to the Jackson family?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course.
I did get a chance to see the documentary. I went to Sundance and viewed it, and it was kind of heartbreaking because Wade Robeson and Jimmy Safechuck, they were one of Michael's greatest defenders. Wade actually testified on the 2005 trial. He was under oath, and he was very, very, he was adamant that Michael had done nothing to him. One of the statements that he made, just to make sure that they understood, they even re-asked him. They said, has Micheal Jackson ever even touched you inappropriately? And his response was, if he had, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So he was one of Mesereau's number one defense witnesses and professor. Plus, he testified under the grand jury in '93. So he was Michael's biggest supporter. That Michael had never touched him, had never done anything. So this documentary, which says everything, he literally says in the documentary that every time he was in Michael's presence, he was violated by Michael. And it's like, come on, this just isn't the same guy that just professed how wonderful of a human being he was.
Right.
And it's just so contradictory to his position towards Michael.
Why on earth would that change have occurred? You just think it's money? I mean, it's crazy, though.
We know it's money because they were part of the Q&A at the end. And at the end, he stood there looking, he just looked so distraught. He looked like he had just gotten molested that day. He was trying to really look sad and look, make everyone feel sorry. And he sat there on the stage and he said, this has nothing to do with money. But he failed to mention that he tried to sue the estate for $1.5 billion. He had a book deal. He was trying to get a book deal. And he was trying to get a position with Michael One. He went to the estate to get the head position for that Michael won Circle A Vegas performance. They found out that he falsified some of his information, and he didn't get the position, and he was totally distraught behind that. And they said that that's pretty much when his words changed, and all of a sudden now it's he's been molested. So there's a lot of things that happened prior where he was trying to go after money, he couldn't, and everyone kind of looks at this as a last ditch effort, but it's
a money grab.
Yeah.
And Brian, I'm going to bring you on, and being the defense attorney for 2005, and I think you were also did a suit against I think the doctor. Is that correct? When Michael passed.
That's correct. Yes, we had to file the lawsuit against Conrad Murray, accusing him of impropriety and improper conduct regarding Michael causing his death.
So tell us, when you heard about this documentary coming out, Leaving Neverland, and I think it's coming out in March, what was your first reaction? And then once you got to hear about what the documentary was about, what was your reaction to this?
Shaking my head, squinching my eyebrows down about as tight as they can get, and just going, what in the world? No, no, and no. It is just ridiculous that people who I had talked to, who I knew personally, who I had conversations with, and I'm talking about Wade Robson, would for some unknown reason, decide that he's going to accuse Michael Jackson. Now, Tony, it's like you and I are sitting here talking to one another, and there's nobody listening. We're just on the phone together, and we're just meeting one another personally, person to person. And I would ask Wade Robson, hey, man, they're accusing Michael of all this stuff. Any truth to it? Wade would say, no way, Brian, it never happened. I go, well, they say that, and I would get very graphic. And I would tell him what the accusations are, because it was my job to find out and to know. They say this happened, that happened, and the description was very detailed. And he said, no way, never happened. This is all fantasy. This is all made up. All right. And then years later, Tony, that you would have the audacity to turn on me after our one-on-one conversation, and tell me something, Tony. What should I think about Wade Robson when one-on-one I ask the man from my heart and for the details, and he tells me this, and then the next thing I know, I see this movie, Leaving Neverland, and I just shake my head, my eyebrows squinch down, and I just go, what kind of fantasy is this man trying to pull on everybody?
So how can the documentary, is there any, as an attorney, is there any libel or defamation that can be
posthumously enforced?
Because if it's he's already went through several trials, he was innocent on both. Right. How can they release this and not get some kind of reaction back?
Well, good question. And the answer is there's not much you can do it. Michael Jackson has passed away. Yes, the estate has an interest in the good reputation, but you can't really defame an estate. All you can do is respond to this. Now, Geraldine said during the trial there was testimony. Let me read it to you. And you tell me, after a man, a grown man at this point, stands up in a court of law, swears on the Bible, swears in front of the entire world to tell the truth, and he's asked this question: are you aware, as you sit here today, that there's been allegations that Michael Jackson molested you? Answer: yes. Mr. Robson, did Michael Jackson ever molest you at any time? Answer: absolutely not. Mr. Robson, did Michael Jackson ever touch you in a sexual way? Answer: never, no. Mr. Robson, has Michael Jackson ever inappropriately touched you or any part of your body at any time? Answer: no. All right, why wasn't this in their film Leaving Neverland? Why wasn't he called on to explain how he would perjure himself in front of the entire world, in front of a jury, and that he would commit a crime? Perjury is a crime. Why wasn't he called on to answer to this? In my view, I think in the view of the entire world, this guy is pathetic. He's a criminal, and yet we have to go through these kinds of ridiculous accusations.
I find it fascinating that one thing, and because you all knew Michael, you've met him, you've worked around him and with him. In fact, we had another guest, Dr. Sherilyn Lee. She is actually a host here on UBN also, and she was one of the nurses when he was nutritionist at his final days. So one of the biggest questions, because people, a lot of people, even in the chat room, there's many that were very supportive, and then there's people that didn't believe he was innocent. But why did Michael, after being, an innocent plea, and they let him go, perfect. Why did he still want to be around children? I know his love for it, but this is just a question. It's like, I would have stayed as far away from children as I could. But I think, was it just his love for children?
It was.
I have sat with Michael at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we talked about, why, Michael? Come on, man, what are you subjecting yourself to this garbage? And Michael would look at me, and he said, Brian, I will not let anybody tell me who I am, what I do, where I go, or how I do it. Michael was very rebellious. Michael had an independent streak of monumental proportions. He says, it makes me feel that I'm returning something to people to take care of children. And then he would quote to me passages in the Bible. He was extremely well read, and he was very religious about how God has insisted that we take and treat children with respect and concern. And he would quote those passages, and he says, I'm not going to let them then stop me. I'm going to do what God has told me to do. As Michael had seen the light, that's what he did.
And I wanted to add to that too, Brian, because when I was writing my book, I did a lot of research on Michael. I said, I'm talking about someone, but I need to get to know him as a person. And even during the 93 allegation, when he was under so much pressure, he was under just humiliation, being, criticized all over the place. But then you look at his giving and how Michael is in the Guinness Book World of Records being the #1 giver.
Really?
And what I noticed is that during the year of 1993, he didn't stop giving. I was even told that when he would go on tours, before he would go to different countries, he always made his staff identify hospitals that he could go to, and so he could visit the sick children. Tom Mesereau told me that when they were preparing for trial, he went to Santa Barbara. He went and sat in the local tavern. He wanted to get to know the people of his community that would probably be on his jury stand. And he found out from the local people that Michael was going into those hospitals and paying the hospital bills. He had a love for kids that no man take that away from him.
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
I want to tell you a story that was very important to me about Michael Jackson, because the prosecutors in Santa Barbara used the same idea, Tony. Well, he knew that there was criticism of him with children, but he had to be with children. Why in the world would he do that? Look, he went with this child who was in the hospital with cancer, and he was grooming him for molestation. This was the accusation up in Santa Maria. And he sent him a fruit basket to groom him for molestation in the hospital. I took out the diary of the secretary, Evie, who sent that fruit basket to the hospital. Michael asked her to do it, so she sent the fruit basket, and she marked it down in her diary, which she kept, her daily planner. And we asked the policeman, is this, who did this? Yes, the secretary. Would you please look down on the rest of the page? Who else did Michael Jackson send a fruit basket to that day? He hesitated, and he says, Ron and Nancy. Ron and Nancy, officer? Is that, by chance, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Davis, his wife? Yes. I mean, come on. This was Michael Jackson. The same day he supposedly sent a fruit basket to a child in the hospital, he also sent one to President Reagan because President Reagan wasn't feeling well. This is the kind of man that he was. And I think it is such a disservice to ignore the greatness of who and what he was.
And there are people in the chat room says, let him rest in peace.
Right.
And I find it, sickening that, and we see it all the time. I'm not saying that people don't need to speak out if they feel that something was wrong, but if it's based on monetarily, you see this all the time. You living out here in California, I mean, people will sue you for dropping a Tic Tac in front of them. I mean, just so when you see these children that now they're not children, I guess they're adults now, but when you see these children put this documentary together, I couldn't imagine the family of Michael Jackson just reliving this over and over when they think finally we can move on, let him rest in peace. As people that knew him and their family, how do you feel personally? And Dr. Lee, since you kind of just got here, so could you tell us how you feel personally of the documentary and how the family has to go through this again?
I think being a mother and having children myself, and actually I'm a grandmother of 10, and being a parent and having to know that the children have to keep going through this over and over, I think, for what reason? I mean, there was so much that he did that was good. Let things rest. I think it's really so disheartening to my heart because I worked so closely with him to see the type of person he was. Even during the time I was working with him, that wasn't every time I can be to be with him. And he would call and I said, I really have a real sick patient. I can't come tonight. And he'll say, when he would see me the next time, how is that person?
Always
he was always concerned. How is that person? I had a person one day with a brain tumor. He said, can I go help them? I would leave Michael because I was a caregiver too of my mom. My mom was very ill during that time. And I would leave him late at night and drive all the way 30 miles to see my mom and get home at daybreak. And he would say, what can I do to help you? I said, I just need to be there in her presence. It's just your prayers are so powerful, and I appreciate it. He would never say, I'm Michael Jackson, and you should come on to see me. I've had people tell me that. I've had people say, well, if Michael was calling you, you would drop everything and go see him. I said, he wasn't that type person. He was not that type of person.
He didn't have the ego.
At all. And he was always concerned about others. Always.
I cannot fathom, and I don't use this word. I never use this word, but I have to just say the evil of creating lies like that for money. I don't care if it's 1.5 billion or whatever it is. I can't imagine a human in that state. That is, seriously, it's like, the thing is, it's so radical that if I weren't here with people who know him so profoundly, I wouldn't create a true opinion because it's none of my business, and you can't know the heart of a man. Right. But the logic behind it is just so outrageous that it would make a person from the outside say, well, I wonder if he is recanting his old stories because he decided to confess his past pain or something. It's like, I don't know, I'm just all over the place. I can't even imagine it.
It's really hard.
I have an answer for you, Trish.
Thank you.
I have an answer for you.
Please.
I did
Michael always said, follow the money. Follow the money.
Yeah.
Well, the money here is going to the Robinson Family Foundation, which was set up in the last 30 days. It's soliciting contributions for the victims of child molestation. And this is on the internet, and they're soliciting and receiving money, which they call for a charitable foundation. I'm sorry. These events for Wade Robson and Jimmy Safechuck took place 25 years ago. And today, only today, within the last 30 days, they decided to be charitable foundations. No, that charitable foundation has decided to make money for these people, and it's illegitimate. It's just a sham to use charity as an excuse to make up these fantastic stories.
And Brian, the documentary, the first part of the documentary, Leaving Neverland, was they portrayed them as cute kids because they were really cute when they were kids. And then they had their moms in it, lovely moms, you know, talking about how they met and everything. And they just, I mean, you could just tell through the first half they're trying to get your sympathy for them as being kids. The second part, the 2-hour part 2, it was obvious that all they used that second part for was to explain why they lied. That's all they talked about was, well, Michael told me this and Michael told me that. And you're just sitting there just saying you have offered no proof, but you're explaining why you lied. And I thought that was really appalling. I was like, wow.
I mean, it is. It's kind of shocking. Sometimes you don't even know what to say because it's, you know, we all grew up idolizing him and seeing his talent, and just, it was, I remember even my uncle years ago, he was like, you know, he's gone now, but he was like, you know, 30 years in the military, and he said, I have to say he is one of the most talented people I've ever seen in my life, because it shined through, his soul just always shined through. And I couldn't imagine, I mean, all of us have daily struggles and daily stresses to live that life, not just the celebrity of it, but then for almost 20 years of living the accusations, and because it's so public. How do you think that affected him? Because Michael, he wasn't odd. He was just Michael. I mean, it was a different. He was
unique.
Unique. That's a great word. Unique. But how did it not completely make him go crazy? Because I couldn't imagine that every day. Not just the celebrity, but the accusations too.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
Because in the time I spent with him from January of 2009 to April of 2009, there was things in the media about him. And I would think, oh my goodness, he's going to be depressed when I get there. He's going to be sad, some things. And you know, I would get there and he was just as happy.
Really?
Yeah. And this is what he had, something he said that I thought was so powerful. If you keep your eyes on the eagle and you soar with the eagle, you don't have time to be bothered with the little chicks. That's what he said. The little chicks chirp, 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 chirp. And to him, that was the gossip. He said, I don't have time for that because I want to soar with the eagles.
Well, he probably had a thick skin. He's been famous since he was a little kid.
I know, but he knew how. He had no remorse. I've been around so many people. He didn't gossip about people. He had nothing negative to say about people. He was concerned if they had a health issue. He would tell me, I want to put you in contact with them so you can help them. But outside of that, he was happy. And I was surprised because I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, let me see what I can say. So he would, be outgoing. And no, he was happy. He was happy. People thought.
Oh, you are so right. You are just so right. That's the way he was.
Yes.
I can. It destroyed him in his heart, though. It hurt him.
Yes.
There was a point in the trial when I had done a 700-page brief with copies of checks and all kinds of explanation as to how the family that had accused him was defrauding the government. and engaged in a scheme to destroy Michael. And I messengered her up to Michael, and it was the 30th of December. On New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve day, he called me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I saw on my phone that it was the Neverland Ranch phone number, and I answered it, and there was silence. I said, "Michael, is that you?" And there was silence. Michael, it's Brian. Are you trying to get me?" And there was silence. And then I heard, "Huh, huh, huh." He couldn't catch his breath, and he was upset. He was trying to talk. I said, Michael, what's the matter?" He goes, and he was just so upset. And finally he said, "Brian." I said, "Yes, Michael. Why are they doing this to me? This memo shows that they're all frauds, that they're all lying, that this is all made up. Why are they doing this to me, Brian? It's killing me, Brian."
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Michael, your name is Micheal Jackson. That's why they're doing it to you. There is only one, and you are Micheal Jackson. If your name was Smith or Jones, they wouldn't be doing it to you. Your name is Micheal Jackson." And that made him feel a little bit better, not much, but a little bit, because he understood, because it's the position in life he is in. And as Dr. Lee said, he carried it very well.
He did.
Very well.
But I think when I met him in 2009, he had gone through so much forgiveness. By the time I met him in 2009, you knew him in the thick of everything. That was different. You knew him in the thick, and I was not there. But by the time I met him, he had let go of so much.
Yes.
And so I didn't see the pain. I didn't see the hurt. He was just happy. I mean, that was the past. And he learned to realize those things happen. I mean, there's no comparison as to who I am and what I do, but I've been attacked, because of him. A lady was going to physically jump on me coming out of a restaurant during the trial because she said, "Oh, you shouldn't have said this, and that person over there is innocent." And I'm like, I didn't bring his name up. I have nothing to do with that. But one lady stopped me in a shopping center, and she kept saying, "Oh my goodness, where are you from?" She wanted to connect me with, with other things. And I'm like, "No, I'm not from any island. I'm straight out of Compton, my dear. I'm not from an island." But the whole thing is, people are cruel. And they said so many cruel things about me. I can't imagine what he went through. I didn't even want to leave my house for the first couple of months during the trial. I didn't want to go anywhere because people are very cruel, very cruel. So with him in the thick of what he was going through, I can imagine what he was going through during that time. But when I met him in 2009, it was totally different. So he, I think, had gone through so much and had let go of so much that he was a very happy person.
Wow.
And not to mention that he had the support of fans all over the world. I got a chance to meet a lot of Michael's fans when my book released, and I went all over the place. I met a lot of his fans, and the undying love that he has from the fan community. And they're not just fanatics. You would think Micheal Jackson's fans are just supporting him blindly. They do their research. They pretty much are real savvy when it comes to facts. And the other thing, one of the main things that a lot of his fans told me was that Michael's really personable with his fans. He actually reached out to them, communicated with them. When he would come home, if the fans were standing there, he'd roll down his window, shake their hands. He always made them feel that he loved them, and I believed he really did. And I think that had to have been the balance right there.
Right.
He had so many people all over. And I mean, I met moms and grandmas and children, 3 generations that all loved Michael in one family. So I kind of think that kind of balanced it out a little bit. He had way more people who loved him.
Yeah.
There was only 4 accusers that came against him. And he was in the company of hundreds, thousands of children for only 4 to have come forward. And one of the things that I wanted to say also is that, the fans do their research, and people need to do their research. A pedophile does not strike. Prior to Wade and Jimmy coming forward, there was really only 2. A pedophile does not strike once every 10 years. Pedophilia is a disease, it's a sickness.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the time you discover that someone is a pedophile,
There's hundreds or thousands of,
Yes,
yeah,
when
victims.
they put that call out and said
That's
there's
true.
anybody that was has any been touched or hurt by Michael, it would have been, I mean, the ones that did come forward, they were all slaughtered at trial as being uncredible. And Tom Sneddon was on a mission. He he had spent so many millions of taxpayer dollars from the 93 accusation. Come 2003, he was trying to save his face by then to prove that I was right. I was right. And so there was 4 agencies: Santa Barbara Police, Santa Barbara
Right.
Sheriff, Los Angeles Police, Los Angeles. And we later found out even the FBI did a probe. They found nothing. And then he had 14 counts in the trial. He walked out. Sneddon wanted him so bad that if Michael Jackson was really a child molester, he wouldn't have walked out in 2005. But he walked out exonerated on all 14 counts.
Now, wasn't the Santa Barbara police, or was it the sheriff department that they did seem like they were out to get Michael?
Right.
Why was that? Because he was such a prominent resident in the area.
Because the accusation went out there, so of course he had to investigate.
Right.
They spent so much money; they had to reach for people that were out of the country. They put all kind of kettle calls out,
Right.
and I believe he was just on a mission to prove that he was right. Otherwise, he shouldn't have never taken the case, and he couldn't. A lot of people need to understand. 93, Michael was never charged.
Right.
He was only investigated in
Right,
93.
right.
They couldn't find, so the prosecutor kept the case open. He never closed the case. He allowed the civil suit to come forward while the
got
criminal, and that's unheard of.
Right.
That's totally unheard of. But and then he had some laws changed. A lot of people think, one of the other questions that a lot of people would ask, they said, well, the reason he didn't get arrested because he settled. That had nothing to do with because if he had found anything criminally against
you can't
Michael,
settle if you're
absolutely.
criminal.
Oh, absolutely. So that was a misnomer. And then the other thing is when Michael settled the case, another question that people would ask, they said, well, if he settled, if he was innocent, why did he pay $20 million? And I was able to tell him he didn't pay $20 million. Michael didn't pay a dime of that settlement. His insurance company paid it, not for negligence. It was just, he had liability insurance.
Right.
And it was paid. And once they determined that it would be paid, Michael wanted to move on with his life.
Of course. Much easier to do it that way.
And on the inside, they were only after money sources. They were only motioning to find out where his money was at and how much he had.
Brian, I'm curious, as an attorney, not me, you, as an attorney, how does one, especially when Michael of that status, defend somebody like Michael Jackson? How do you even begin? Because that's a lot of work to defend somebody of that status.
There is another story to tell you.
Oh.
It was at 2:30 in the morning, the day that Michael was charged with the grand jury indictment in Santa Barbara. I got a phone call from Randy Jackson, who was Michael's younger brother, who really managed the entire trial and is very responsible for those 14 not guilty verdicts. Randy was the man behind the man, and I cannot give him enough credit. He called me at 2:30. He says, Brian, this is horrible. Just a minute. And the next thing I knew, Michael was on the line. And Michael says, hi, Brian. I said, hi, Michael. He says that they charged me today. I said, I know, Michael. He says, if it's just me against them, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And this is the answer to your question, Tony. I said, Michael, we're going to overturn every single rock. And whatever crawls out from underneath those rocks, so be it. But if it's just your testimony against their testimony, this is the lecture that I gave Michael at 2:30 in the morning the day he was charged. If it's just your testimony, Michael, it's a 93% chance you will be convicted. What our job is to change you into the 7% from the 93%. And the way you do that, Michael, is with the documents, the papers, the records. They don't lie. Those pieces of paper that we all create every day of our lives, receipts, telephone bills, credit card receipts, which show where you are and what's going on, those pieces of paper don't lie. People lie, but the papers do not. I said, we will document where you were every minute of the day. He says, but Brian, I don't use credit cards. I don't do those things. I said, Michael, you're on the phone with me now. You're creating a piece of paper. Evie uses credit cards. Grace, your assistant, uses credit cards. Everyone around you, wherever you go, is a log, is a piece of paper. Well, that's what we gathered, and that's what destroyed the accusations. So when you say, how do you defend somebody? You defend them with the papers. I did 120 subpoenas. I got over 1 million pieces of paper with those 120 subpoenas, and it's those papers that showed Michael was never near these kids, never molested them, wasn't anywhere near them to touch them.
Wow. That's
amazing.
That's the way to do it.
My goodness.
So after this was all over, and we'll get back to the documentary, but after this was all over, can Michael, or did he try to get reimbursed for some of the money that he spent for the defense? Because I'm sure he spent millions and millions to defend himself. Can he get...
It was the largest investigation in Santa Barbara history, the largest trial. They spent over $5 million.
Wow.
And that's now going back to 2005. So we're talking in today's terms about 10 to 15 million dollars. Michael had to spend equally, if not greater, in order to defend himself. The cost was unbelievable, and I call it guilt by inundation. In other words, you get inundated with at that time a $5 million onslaught against you. If you don't have the money to resist that kind of thing, you get inundated. You're run over like by a steamroller. Michael had the money. It was hard to come by. Randy had to sell a watch worth $1.5 million during the trial in order to generate enough money to be able to withstand this onslaught. It was a battle of money. And that Michael always said, he says, we believe, this is a quote from Michael, we believe in via con Dios, go with the deity. He says, I always thought it was via con dinero, go with the money.
Well, again, this documentary is like bringing a old wound back to the surface, and it's going to be released in a few weeks. What? Because we only just have about 8 minutes left, and I know it's gone so fast already. But what is the fans of Michael? Do we protest it? Do we just not watch it? Do we not? How do we?
Don't give it any attention.
Don't give it attention because it's getting
engage.
Attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we're giving it attention now, but it's good to see both sides.
Cancel your HBO subscription.
It's going to be on
HBO.
Wow.
Really?
I'm surprised HBO. Wow.
They're the ones that did the documentary.
Really? I'm surprised. Maybe they want ratings. I mean,
Wow.
They're the ones that did it. I saw on the social media today that there was discussions about them possibly, because the fans are protesting all over the world, protesting, and I saw a quote saying that they were considering pulling it. And then right behind that one, I saw one where they came forward and just gave a date of when they are moving forward and they're going to. So I would just say cancel your subscription. I don't agree with what they're doing. Nowhere in the documentary did they give it an opportunity for there to be a rebuttal. Yeah, it's just a one-sided story being told. And Wade Robson, he's quoted himself as being a master of deception. So you're getting, and he had an interest in being a filmmaker. He said Michael told him at one time he was going to be as good as Spielberg. And I really do believe this is his best work right here, and he's the actor in it.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what I was wondering. There's been tons of documentaries about Michael Jackson. Why is this one getting so much hype? Why do you think this is the one?
Because it is so maybe so polarized in its angle. Because it's gossipy.
Yes. Well, and then Michael is not here to defend
Right.
himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Are y'all familiar? I mean, you probably do know who Furpo Carr is.
Yes.
Yes.
Me and Purple. When my book released, Redemption, and we said something in the beginning, but when I released this book, and this book was released in 2004, I didn't just write this
Right.
book.
It's been around.
But we released our press release in November of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
That was the same month Snedden announced that he was investigating Michael. So he was trying to come to say, he did it again. It's been 10 years, but he did it again. And we were coming to say, well, he didn't do it the first time.
You and Furpo were.
Yeah, so me and Furpo, we were the voice declaring Michael's innocence, and we were crossing each other in studios. I remember we did a panel with Geraldo, me and Furpo, and the Geraldo said something that made Furpo upset. Furpo took his microphone off and
Another Geraldo moment.
It was a live interview, and he walked right off the set. And I said, wow.
Well, I
actually-
didn't show up in 2000.
I actually met Furpo one night. We actually spent an evening. We had dinner together, and I recognized a similar heartache in all three of y'all, including Brian, and that I experienced in Furpo that night. Furpo, Tony, and anyone else was a spokesperson for Michael, and also like a spiritual advisor to the family as well in general, and a spokesperson for the family. And he's just a lovely, lovely man.
Right.
And just really beautiful. So I got a lot of this perspective that evening that I spent with Furpo, my husband and me, and I share a last name with him. So we have the same last name. So we were
my
pretty.
goodness.
The serendipity of it all, the providence of it all. We were like, wow, this is amazing. But it was a beautiful moment.
Well,
Tony,
go
Trish, I
ahead.
want you to notice something.
Sure.
People who knew Michael Jackson, like Dr. Lee, Geraldine, myself, we defend him to the hilt.
Mm-hmm.
To the hilt. The only people who you hear making accusations against him are strangers, or, in the case of Robson and Safechuck, people who previously swore under oath to a jury, to a court of law, that it weren't so, and are now trying to make a buck off of it. Yeah. Those are take your choice, which side you want to be on.
Right.
People who just believe in Michael because they knew him and they liked him, or people who got the almighty dollar at stake. I'd rather be on my side.
I agree. Just because of time, I want to ask one more question, and it's actually from the chat room. And since you all knew him, Cosmo said, question for the panel. What was Michael Jackson's spiritual practices or beliefs? Had he found spirit outside face value religion? Had he found it outside of the religion?
Michael always made it known that he was a believer in Christ. He quoted the scriptures on there. I know at one point he was Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. He's responsible for one of the most beautiful temples in the Encino. But when he made the Thriller album, they took all that lovely money that he donated and kicked him out.
Oh, really?
You could just tell by the way he quotes scriptures that he definitely had Christian values and Christian beliefs on how he lived his life and how he was governing his life. And that was his alibi as to why he spent so much time. He said the Bible says, that we're to be as children,
right.
That we're to be as innocent and pure as children. And Michael was every bit of that quote.
Even
Because-
more so, you'll know them by their fruits and
Yes.
the charity and the love.
And when I was seeing him, he knew that I'm a very spiritual person. Mm-hmm. He knew, and now I am an ordained minister as well. So he knew all these things in going in. And I told him, I don't do anything. Even when I went to go see the children, I don't do anything unless I pray first. He said, I am so happy to hear that. I am so happy. So we held hands and we prayed.
Amen.
That's great.
So, very spiritual.
I got to echo, yes, he was extremely spiritual.
Yes.
And he firmly believed in God. We talked about it a lot. I knew him in the midst of his greatest trial. And I said, Michael, you're going to come out through this. Your metal is going to be stronger. And he says, I hope so. I wish to walk in the shadow of God. That's what he wanted.
Well, Brian, tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, hear you, because I know you have a lot going on. So tell us where we can.
Oh, shoot. I do NBC Sports Radio. I am on the Talk Radio Network, and I just generally cause trouble wherever I go.
And Geraldine, how do people purchase your book? And this is a book right here. Go pick it up.
Redemption is available on Amazon.com, and we're actively looking to turn Redemption into a movie.
Oh, that'd be great.
Oh, wonderful.
Worldwide movie, so people can see what they did to Michael.
We'll vote for that one.
Dr. Lee?
Well, I was in the midst of writing a book years ago that I actually finished, and it's an audiobook. I have several of Michael's engineers that came on board to help me for free. The title of the book is Written Before I Was Born.
That's great.
There is a chapter in there on Michael, but it's Flying with the Eagles. That's the
great.
chapter.
I love
It is beautiful. If anybody go on YouTube and look at the journey of an eagle, it's absolutely beautiful, showing that you have choices that you can make. You can sit there and wither and die, or you can do the other things you need to do and become healthy and fly away and live for another 30 years in good health.
Love
so
that.
you have a choice. So that's part of the book. But I could be found right here at UBN.
That's right.
Every Wednesday from 11 to 12. A new wellness TV with Dr. Lee. Did I forget my own show?
Yes, you did, but I got you. I got your back. I got your back.
And I also have a clinic. So it's in Marina Del Rey. New Wellness Healthcare. So I can be found. I'm very easy to find.
And Tricia, thank you for, again, joining us today as a co-host while Captain Ron is out.
My
But
pleasure.
tell everybody where they can hear your show and find you.
Well, you can hear it here on UBN as well. You can find it on podcast outlets or on YouTube. Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. I'm an intuitive, and my show is all about metaphysics and mysticism and spirituality in general.
Well, everybody, thank you so much. And please share this show. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. We want you to like subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate you every week. We have more next week. And as always, we thank you for supporting us, because without you guys, we would have no show. So thank you. Until next time, this is Truth Be Told. Talk to you soon.